Hello, everyone. Welcome to What's New in Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. We're going to talk about version 41. This is a big Microsoft fall release. There are a lot of features, and we're going to cover them today. As you know, we have a technical slide. If you have any technical or content-related questions during the presentation, please use our Q&A window, and we will address your questions after we are done with the presentation. Closed captioning is available if you select the CC button at the bottom of the right corner of your media player screen. You can expand, minimize, and move each of the window panes displayed on your screen if you need to. And this presentation is being recorded, and we will send all registrants a link to this recording after the webinar. My name is Katya Zuyevska, and I'm having Malay Shah with me, and today together we will walk you through the finance and supply chain topics. What's our agenda? As you see, it seems quite busy. On the finance side, we're going to talk about financial tax updates. We will touch base on the modern bank reconciliation. We will talk about customer prepayment option on sales order invoicing. We will talk about features for the year-end close, the validation, and just features in general, which ones are on by default, which ones are mandatory. We'll touch base on those. And there are quite a bit of topics in the supply chain updates. We'll discuss approval management mobile app, decouple production registration from time and attendance, register time spent working on projects for production, container label printing improvements, mobile device dynamic printer selection improvements, couple of things related to warehouse management, such as load packing slip posting and location directive, feature states and changes related to supply chain updates as well. After we're done, we will move on to the Q&A. So let's get started. We will start with finance features, enhancements, updates, and the biggest one, I would say, in version 41 is related to customer prepayment on sales order invoicing. As you know, or if maybe you experience this or you're looking to this feature yourself, it's been a very long time since Microsoft actually addressed that, I would say, because it's a very common question. Why can't we have a prepayment functionality for customers on the sales orders? And that was a very common issue for a lot of clients. And now Microsoft is moving towards this feature and improving and making this happen. However, I want you to be very careful. This is a preview feature, and it looks like it's not going to be out of preview till for sure February of 2025. So if you're really waiting for that feature, I would still suggest to hold on. Be aware that it's almost there. I will walk you through what it can do, and also I will touch base on what it can't do as of right now. It's a preview, which means Microsoft is still working on that, so that's to some degree anticipated. So what is it going to look like? How are we going to deal with that? If you're familiar with the purchase order prepayments, it's going to have a similar concept. Not 100%, but very, very close. That means that you would start by configuring your posting form on the sales order tab, like currently you do on the purchase order tab, where you have a prepayment option that you can define your, usually a category. In this case, it's going to be a sales category, and you will say which GL account your prepayments needs to go to. You will also update AR parameters. There will be some configurations there. So you do need to do some configurations before you start using that. Overall, how you're going to see that, I have a little screenshot that on the sales orders, you will see on the top, I believe, prepayment option. It's going to be similar to purchase orders. You will be able to enter prepayment amount as a dollar value or a fixed percentage from your invoice. And the concept is going to be similar in general to the purchase order invoices. You're going to tell the system what is your prepayment. Is it the percentage? Is it the dollar value? What is that? After that, you will confirm and post a prepayment invoice. Then you will pay or receive, in your case, receive a payment for this prepayment invoice, so that will get settled. And then you will apply prepayment to the final invoice that is going out to your customer. So conceptually, it's the same as purchase orders. And now we're going to talk about some things that are in process. I would use this word, in process, in terms of what Microsoft is working on. So a couple of things that we tried to test and things that we found during our testing. And maybe those are the things that are being cooked right now, right? Because it's a preview. And maybe that's how it's going to work in general. So you can't see the prepayment tab if you work with sales orders from the all sales orders form. Typically, you go to all sales orders form, you will select your sales order, and then you would click on the tab that you need. So it opens and you see prepayment information. That's how it works on purchase orders. That's not the case in sales orders. You would need to actually open that sales order, and then you will be able to see that. There is additional electronic reporting format configured for that. That's where AR parameters come in. You will have to download that and enable this and plug that in so it comes in. Excuse me. It's interesting that you can use this ER format before you post a payment or you process a payment. Excuse me. But you actually cannot use that if you post that prepayment invoice. You will get a voucher with your debits and credits, and then you can reprint an invoice from the voucher form. Then you don't need ER format. So basically, I guess what I'm saying, it depends on at what point and if you need a customer prepayment invoice. So that would be a consideration. If you need to email your customer a prepayment information first, before you receive any payments, you will need to work on the ER format. When you create the prepayment invoice, you haven't posted it yet. You're just trying to enter information, validate that, check that. As of right now, you can't add lines to that prepayment invoice, right? You would basically have your category, your amount that kind of comes from your defaults, but you can't really make any other changes. And if you have to add a line or remove a line, you basically need to delete the whole invoice and recreate. So it's a little bit inconvenient in terms of like the user experience. Again, I'm hoping that this is in process and going to get better later. The new change about the sales order prepayment invoices is that invoices have a status, specifically prepayment invoices. So there are various statuses that help you understand what happened to that prepayment invoice. Was it just recorded? Was it processed? What happened with that? So you would need to learn a little bit the new language in terms of, okay, this is an invoice. This is a prepayment invoice. It obviously does not address my sales order status or a sales order invoice. It's a separate thing, but it also helps you understand where it stands in terms of this whole cycle of creation, posting, payment application, and application to the final invoice. On the AR parameters, you have a choice to determine how are you going to apply prepayments to sales orders. Right? A lot of you possibly, if you process sales orders, you might actually have a batch job that invoices your sales orders automatically. Basically, not every customer creates a manual sales invoice and then assigns a prepayment to that. A lot of times it happens automatically as the batch. So the prepayment invoice functionality allows you to have a choice to automatically apply a prepayment invoice to a sales order. The interesting part that was kind of surprising about this whole process is that once you applied a prepayment invoice to a final sales order invoice, you don't see the effect of the postings, right? Like on the purchase order side, you immediately see that there is a prepayment invoice being sort of like deducted out of the main invoice, right? So main invoice amount decreases because there is already a prepayment. And this functionality on the sales order happens in 2 steps. That was a big surprise to me because originally I thought like, well, it's going to be a purchase order. It's like, no, it's slightly different. You have to enable a background process to update the settlement. When you process a final sales order invoice, without that background process, you're going to have 2 separate invoices, one for prepayment and one for the final invoice, which obviously inflates your balances. Once you run the background process, there are additional postings that the system does to settle them both together and arrive to correct balances. That's something that needs to be kept in mind when you do the configurations initial, and that would be a batch job, I believe, that runs that. So the batch job needs to run frequently. So this is where we stand in terms of the customer prepayment invoice as of right now. Like I said, this is a preview. It's going to continue to stay in a preview at least till February of 2025, and we will update you once we have a new feature review for version 42, see if Microsoft addressed some of these changes. If you do want to start using that, I would suggest a very thorough testing, because from what we've seen, as soon as you start deviating, like, well, I settled this invoice with this payment, now I want to unsettle, or maybe you want to write off a prepayment invoice. As soon as you start being creative with things that you can do with a sales order invoice, sometimes you're not getting the expected results. I would suggest to hold on and maybe wait a little bit until Microsoft finishes that. But it is exciting that it's coming and it's almost there. Okay, moving on. You're going to see new views on your free text invoices. Microsoft introduced a free text invoice performance boost. And that means that, first of all, when you go to all free text invoices menu, it will show you only invoices that have a status not posted. That's a little bit uncommon because you would expect to see everything, right? So you visually might be like, oh, what's that? That's the thing. So now you would need to sort your invoices, kind of like similar what you do with journals. You would need to find all posted, not posted. And then you're also going to have a new menu item for optimized invoice loading page that allows you to basically filter your data, query your data in a much more efficient way and just get the data that you're looking for, right? Because you might have a lot of free text invoices. So this is just a heads up, be aware that free text invoices now look a little bit differently. Modern bank reconciliation feature. So it's out of preview, it's live, it's in production environments. And as you know, it is going to be, to some degree, it's a separate feature by itself, but it also has a lot of other advanced bank reconciliation features related to that. Basically, I would say it almost feels like since spring of this year, or maybe even since the beginning of this year, every time when we talk about finance, we talk about like, hey, there is a new feature for advanced bank reconciliation. Microsoft is really trying to enhance that. So ultimately, modern bank reconciliation works only for advanced bank reconciliation. If you're not doing advanced bank reconciliation, this does not apply to you. Advanced bank reconciliation means you import bank statements into your system and then you ask the system to reconcile transactions for you. It used to be a little bit, I would say, confusing, not user-friendly in terms of like how you work through the process, how you see transactions, how to reconcile transactions. And modern bank reconciliation is here to address those issues. So first of all, it enhances quite a bit of options that you can do within the reconciliation. It updates the user interface, so now it's much more friendlier. There are ways to import statements automatically into the system. There are quite a bit of enhancements for matching rules. It used to be very limited. You can do this and pretty much it. Now it's you can do quite a bit more. Now, not to mention this, you can post and match customer vendor payments in your bank reconciliation, and there are enhanced reportings and analytics. We're going to have a separate it's not exactly what's new, but brunch and learn session next Thursday, specifically about modern bank reconciliation. Because I think what Microsoft has done is a big improvement, and I would love all of you to take a look and see if some of that can be applied to you. Moving on, we have a feature for a customer account rename data maintenance. If you ever is in a situation where you have to update a customer account, right? Typically, you would use a rename function on a customer record. And it's a big process, right? Because then the system needs to go and find all the references and update them from the old name to the new name. And sometimes it fails for many reasons because of the table structure, amount of data. So Microsoft introduced a customer account rename data maintenance. And you can log in and get into this form, and you will process the records that haven't been really synced yet. So now every record is updated. So keep that in mind if you need to use that. Another feature that I want to touch base is a validation feature for a year-end close process. That feature will help you detect the issues during your year-end close. So once and soon it will be upon us, and for some of you it is upon you now, when your fiscal year-end happens, when you go to the year-end close form, you will see a new button, Validate Year-end Close Results. When you click on that, you will get an update from the system. Are you doing okay? If there is anything that to be improved. I would probably treat this as a validation on your journals. It's a good idea to go and click and see where you stand and then proceed. The next one is actually quite interesting feature. It's adjust sales tax amount per vendor charged sales tax. And that feature introduces an option, accrue sales tax type adjustment, in two places, in vendor master and on vendor invoice header. So the concept is here, when your vendor charges you a sales tax, and you need to record this on your vendor invoice, and if you're already using the system for that, and maybe sales tax is being calculated for you, or you need to type this in, you have an option to override the system sales tax calculations and basically input what you got from your vendor. And those will be posted as a sales tax adjustments transactions. So on this screen, I have an option I have a screenshot that shows you where you can plug in this choice on the vendor master, because maybe you know that, hey, from this vendor, we always get, like, we never kind of tie on the taxes that are being charged. So you can default this on the vendor on the invoice and delivery tab. But if you don't do that, you also have a choice to update this. And this is the next slide on the vendor invoice header, where you specify, I do want to use the adjustment type and what is my amount. So you would enter this on the header, and the system will process that further. Okay. A couple of feature enhancements is the customer payment journals. Now, if you have a payment journal with many, many, many lines without undisputed collection status, it's now being processed faster and more efficient. And same applies to customer aging reports. Sometimes it takes a while to really get your data. There is a process improvement to calculate aging buckets in this report. I believe we talked about this feature. I would like to get to, just a second, Oanda. In Oanda, a lot of you might be using Oanda to bring exchange rates to the system. So now there is an option to bring Oanda central banks. You will go to the usual place where you configure exchange rate providers. And before you used to just do Oanda rates, and now you can specify Oanda central bank, whatever that central bank is. And then once you have your contract with Oanda, you can provide the details of Oanda central bank to the system. And then it will start doing the API calls to bring the exchange rate into the system. Couple of things that I would like to mention about finance features that are mandatory or on by default. You know, some of those things are always catch us by surprise. It's like, hey, now you have this. Like, okay. So PT Cash, there is a new posting profile for that. So what does that mean? We did, I think PT Cash was introduced in version either 38 or 39. I believe it was 39, and it was a feature, and that was kind of optional. You can have it or you cannot have it. It's basically a separate subledger, and that's why I'm bringing this up as a new posting profile. It will matter potentially for your folks who are in accounting who process general journal entries, right? Because when they create a general journal entry, they would say like, well, I want to do a ledger or a customer or a vendor or a fixed asset, whatever they do in the general ledger journal. It's usually the easiest way to see the posting profiles. Now you're going to have a new posting profile called PDCache. This whole functionality about PDCache is basically a separate subledger. Now it's on by default. Therefore, you're going to have a new posting profile. If you don't have configurations for that, it's totally fine. You don't have to use it. Just don't be surprised that all of a sudden you have a new thing. There is a tax on transfer orders that will apply to European operations. There is on recurring accounts payable invoices. Global General Journals page, you can select multiple companies to post journals. As I mentioned, there are various improvements for the advanced bank reconciliation, and they're on by default right now, so they're there for you to use. And the check number validation is enabled by default as well. That's it for finance updates, and I'm going to pass this over to Malay to talk about supply chain.
Thank you, Katya. So now we'll look at the supply chain new features which are getting released with this version. First one is in the inventory management module, where you can track time series inventory in inventory visibility. So inventory visibility, this external system integrated with D365 can now access accurate and up-to-date inventory availability information. This capability enables user to promise sales order, search for spare parts, and view material availability more efficiently and confidently. This feature now enables external system to query supply chain for inventory changes occurring up to 180 days in the future. As a result, users working in an external system will be able to view future inventory availability details and can make accurate projections for when orders can be delivered. This feature also enables the service to import information about planned inbound and outbound inventory changes together with related dates. Available to promise functionality in inventory visibility can then query these time series based inventory changes and calculate your omnichannel ADP. External systems can query and retrieve this information from inventory visibility in near real time by calling its API. The general availability is September 13, 2024, and this is enabled in feature management. The feature name is Inventory Visibility Integration with ATP. Next one is in procurement and sourcing module. This one is a very great feature coming out. This is for approved purchase orders and requisitions from mobile devices. Many businesses makes use of approval workflows to make sure that requisitions and purchase orders are valid, in budget, and in line with business practice and standards. Uh, Unfortunately, this extra layer of security can sometimes add delays to purchasing process. Therefore, D365 now provides a mobile approval experience which adds flexibility, efficiency, reliability, and responsive to the approval process. This feature, users responsible for approving purchase requisitions can now respond to approval tasks from their mobile devices. Procurement approval activities includes approvals related to purchase requisition lines, purchase orders, and order lines. The mobile app starts by presenting an overview of the user assigned task and due dates. From there, the user can open the detail for each purchase requisition and purchase order to be approved, all without switching context. On gaining a full understanding of the context and details of the approval request, the user can then choose between approval options configured for the workflow by selecting the appropriate response, whether to approve, reject, request change, or delegate to another user. To install the app, you go to the Power Platform Admin Center and enable Allow Publishing of the Canvas app with Core Components feature. Then install the D365 Approvals Management app. The general availability of this feature is October 2024, but the exact date is still not released yet. This is enabled in Dataverse and Power Apps. The one thing to note that this is still a preview feature. Preview features aren't meant for production use and might have a restricted functionality. So here in the screenshot, we can see that when we log into the mobile app, we will see the purchase orders, and then we will see the lines. When we select the lines, we can select all, and at the bottom, we have the options to complete it, accept, return, delegate, or a request change. So now approvals can be done from anywhere using the app and not have to log into D365 to complete it. Next feature is decouple production registration from time and attendance. This feature makes it possible for workers to register production work using your manufacturing execution without requiring managers to approve workers' time registration and adjustments. For companies that don't use the time and attendance modules of D365, this enables a faster workflow and easier setup. This feature separates the process for manufacturing execution from approval process for time and attendance. Production managers can now configure supply chain management to permit managers to skip the approval process for recorded work times where adjustments have been applied, such as registration errors or unpaid time off. This means that production managers can now end production orders without waiting for payroll managers to approve time and attendance. This feature also allows finance controllers to calculate production costs based on estimate operation times instead of recorded production times. This is useful for those production jobs where time estimates are typically more accurate than the recording time. General availability of this feature is September 13, 2024, and it can be enabled in feature management. Next one is registered time spent working on project for production. So this is within the same feature as of the last slide, but this provides an effective way to track time spent on projects without requiring workers to fill out a timesheet every time they start and stop work. Instead, workers can now use the production floor execution interface to register their time directly. This capability is especially relevant when doing activities such as research and trial runs that aren't directly related to daily production orders. Supervisors and managers can now set up a production floor execution interface to allow workers to register time used on project activities. When a worker is ready to start on a new project, they'll simply select the project from a list, and then system knows the time it was started. When the worker registers their next activity, such as clocking out or starting a new project or production job, the system registered that as the end time of the previous projects and updates its journal of project start and end times. Again, general availability is September 13, and this feature is enabled by feature management. Next one is in the warehouse management module, unannounced returns in warehouse management only mode. So unannounced return handling in supply chain management was released. This feature was released a couple of releases back, but now it is extended to the warehouse management only mode. So this feature basically does the same functionality. It allows you to gain more control and flexibility over customer return process. Warehouse operator can inspect and return goods and choose to postpone disposition code selection until the inspection is done. This makes it easier for warehouse operator to manage and review returned items and choose how to process the return. Warehouse workers no longer need to select a disposition code immediately upon receipt of a return item. Instead, choose to postpone decision until the item is inspected. The prerequisite is that you must be running supply chain management on version 41 or later. So those were the new features. Now we will look at the feature enhancements, which are part of this release. Within master planning, we have enhancement to enable the calculation of batch CTP even when plan runs end with errors. So this feature allows for CTP confirmed dates to be calculated for sales order lines, even when the planning optimization runs ends with error. Confirmed dates will be calculated for sales order line that didn't have any errors. To enable or disable this behavior, use the calculate batch CTP even with error setting in the plan setting for your dynamic plan. Next one is in production control module, where you can add filters to hide completed jobs on the Kanban board. So this feature allows you to add a hide complete job checkbox on your Kanban board. This option lets you focus to hide all the completed jobs, which provides a cleaner and more focused view. Next updates are in procurement and sourcing. Choose whether to consolidate sales orders for direct deliveries. This feature makes it possible to choose whether the create direct delivery orders batch job should consolidate qualifying sales order into a single purchase order when creating a direct delivery. You can control this behavior using a new Consolidate Sales Order for Direct Delivery setting on the Delivery tab of the Procurement and Sourcing parameter page. When you enable this feature, the system defaults to not consolidating qualifying sales order, which is different from a previous behavior. Previously, the batch job always consolidated the qualifying sales orders. Enable purchase order parameters to control delivery information sync on sales and purchase orders. So this feature controls the creating and updating of the delivery mode and delivery terms fields on purchase order. The new parameters are added for stock and direct delivery scenarios. We have quite a few enhancements in warehouse management area. Container label printing improvements. This is a good one. The system now allows printing of container labels when closing a container, which helps you with your packing process if you choose to label your product at that time. Next one is custom label layout data source parameters. On a custom label data source, it is now possible to define parameter that user can specify when printing labels. This parameter can then used in label layout in addition to values retrieved from the table record, for example, to specify a quantity of labels to print. So this is a very good one, and it was requested for a very long time, where we had to predefine the quantity of the labels printed, and we didn't have an opportunity to just print different label quantities on the go. So either we had to rely on reprinting the labels if we needed multiple copies of it, but this feature now adds a field where we can now put the amount of labels we need, and it will give us that many copies of that label. Next one is dynamic printer selection improvements. So this enhancement lets you assign a default printer to specific mobile devices. So for now, till now, dynamic printer selection allowed to users to assign a printer to the worker or to a location or a zone. But now it goes a step further, and you can assign it to mobile devices, and it can be very helpful for the users, like print it when they're using a device in a specific area. Next one is load slip posting. This feature introduces the capability to execute sales order packing slip procedures as a background batch task with the warehouse loads. Next one is location directives locate by ASN for transfer receipt. This feature introduces the capability to put all the items on a license plate in one location and prevents the system from making you split the items into different locations for ASN for transporters. Now we will look at the features that are getting deprecated as of this version. The first one is job card terminal. So job card terminal is being replaced by a new production floor execution interface. And it's the area which is affected is production control. In the status is that if the feature is deprecated approximately 1 year after the release of version 10.041, the job card terminal will no longer be supported and may eventually be removed from the product. So if you guys still are, if anyone is still using job card terminal, look to move to the new production floor execution interface. Next one is inventory transaction support for internal warehouse operation. The reason for deprecating inventory transaction to track on-hand inventory for internal operation has well-known performance issues. So replaced by another feature, yes, a warehouse-specific inventory transaction, which has been available since version 32, replaces the old inventory transaction for tracking internal warehouse operations. So status is that supported until version 40. As of version 41, inventory transactions will be deprecated for tracking on-hand inventory for internal warehouse operations. Existing customers will be able to continue using the scenario after that version, but new feature and the bug fixes for the scenario will only be implemented for warehouse-specific inventory transactions. Approximately 1 year after this release, support for these scenarios will be removed, and all the customers will be required to move to warehouse-specific inventory transactions for tracking on-hand inventory for internal warehouse operations. And the last one is release to warehouse page. So release to warehouse page is getting deprecated because of performance issues, and it is replaced by another feature. The release of warehouse page is now split into two new release to warehouse pages, which together provides equivalent functionality with improved performance. The new pages are release sales orders to warehouse, and release transfer orders to warehouse. So this feature is deprecated and is now hidden in the app, but you can enable it if it's necessary by contacting Microsoft support. We strongly recommend that you instead use the new release to warehouse order or transfer order feature because they provide same functionality with improved performance. The release to warehouse page will be completely removed from the product 1 year after the version 41. So that's all for supply chain updates for version 10.0.41. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat box on the side to submit your questions. So question from Dave, will this presentation deck be made available to attendees? Yes, we can. Just let us know if you would like to get a copy of it and we can send that over. Any other questions? Okay, last call for any questions out there. Thank you everyone for attending today's session. If you do have any questions later on, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you and have a good day.